Hello, all. A very good evening to all the audience joining us today. I hope you are able to see us, hear us loud and clear. And my name is Sashank. I'm a part of DataBeat. I handle the media side of things here at DataBeat, and it gives me immense happiness to welcome you all to today's webinar. Trying to quickly set a context of what's going to happen here today. Before we do that, I would like to remind all of you who have joined us here today that this is the third webinar that we have been doing as a part of our Knowledge and Insights series. The first one was a webinar on the AdTech validator, huge impact. We have been seeing almost 15 to 20,000 AdTech lines being added every month after our webinar. And it was, the panel again was pretty awesome. We had people join us from Insider, Publer, Cortex. The second webinar was even further successful. We did it on cookie apocalypse, and the impact was so big that Google decided to roll back the changes that they were planning to do. So we were, the kind of webinars that we have been able to do, the kind of panel that we have been able to bring in, and the kind of impact that we have been able to show has been immense. And thus, I think it's not going to be a surprise when I say that today's webinar on the insights, strategies, and the challenges into advertising trends in CTV, the connected TV part of it, is also going to be equally awesome. Let me welcome you all once again, joining us from different parts of the globe into this webinar today. And in terms of kicking this off, I think that change is the only constant, as they say. But are all changes good? For example, in CTV, we have seen growing from 59 minutes to 133 minutes. But how much of it is sustainable? How are people able to leverage this kind of growth? What are the challenges in order to be able to leverage this kind of growth? I think these are questions that we are interested in finding out answers to today over the next course of the next 45 to 50 minutes. And to enlighten us, to share anecdotes, to throw insights, to possibly help us understand better about all of this, we also have an awesome panel here with us today. And in terms of welcoming them all, yes, I have Fred Godfrey, CEO Origin. He leads Origin Media, an award-winning creative tech company focused on building dynamic CTV solutions. He has previously worked at Tremor Video and EW Scripts and was key in launching an SSP as well as guiding Newsys transition. His expertise, of course, lies in spotting market gaps with an unconventional approach shaped by a background in philosophy as well as dyslexia and a late onset ADHD. So a very, very, having been a part of the previous webinar, what should I say, preparation sessions, Fred brings in a wealth of knowledge from the buy side of things. And Fred, it's really awesome to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for taking out time and being here.
Thank you for having me.
Quickly moving on, I also take the privilege to welcome Anna Hitchins, Senior Director, Publisher Account Management at OpenX. She oversees the publisher relationships at OpenX and carries an experience of 19 plus years in digital advertising. A couple of decades in digital advertising is like probably a few lifetimes in some of the other areas, given the kind of changes that this specific sector has seen, of late. She has previously worked with Amazon, Yahoo, Verizon, driving strategies for CTV partnerships as well as business development. And of course, she loves tennis. She loves having a family time. So thank you, Anna, for taking out time on a Friday evening to be here with us today. We are glad to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Paul Salomone, whom we call Salo. We know him as Salo, and we have been now knowing him for quite some time. DataBeat works with OnCore as well as OpenX. Before Anna accuses me of not bringing that up. So in clear transparency, yes, we work with OnCore as a part of their client success as well as their AdOps team. But this is more about Paul. He brings in more than 2 decades of experience in digital advertising, health, and entrepreneurship. As CEO of OnCore Digital, Media Fuse, and Revenue, a brand specializing in yield management and media deal facilitation, he has been creating a lot of impact, and I can testify the fact that the kind of value that they have been adding to their clients and the kind of impact that they have been able to create in the CTV space has been phenomenal. And we are happy to have him here and be able to partner with OnCore as well. Thank you, Salo, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Shashank. Happy to be here.
And last but not the least, we have our own in-house CEO of DataBeat, Ashok, a digital media expert with immense experience in revenue strategy, partnerships, and of course, I think building DataBeat into what it is today, a 250-member team working with 40+ organizations across the globe. So, Ashok, pleasure to have you. And more importantly, he's also going to be moderating the discussion today. So, Ashok, with that, over to you.
Thank you, Shashank. Thank you, Fred, Paul, and Anna for being here with our audience today. Personally and professionally, I have seen CTV change a lot. And like when I go to any of my peers, no one uses a linear TV anymore. Even my parents switched to CTV. They're nearing their 70s. And even among my clients in the last couple of years, CTV had been a very important growth strategy. So I'm very excited that we are discussing CTV today. I would like to request the panel to kick off by sharing their thoughts as to how they see their journey with CTV has been, how they have seen the growth, and how it has been impacting the space. Maybe Paul, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ashok. So yeah, just like you said, Ashok, I think, we've all seen CTV adoption kind of rise over the last couple of years, in our personal lives. I personally cut the cable a long time ago. We're seeing a lot of people do that as well. It's up to now, I believe 88% of all US households are now using connected TV. So huge adoption, especially with the new generation. Things are continuing to rise and expected to get up as high as about 97%, right? In my own personal experience with my business, we've been doing this for over a decade on the web side of the business. And in a few short years, when CTV hit the market, CTV is now more than 50% of our business. So just within a couple year time frame, it is completely skyrocketed. So we're seeing a lot of conversations around CTV. For advertisers, it really is a game changer because it gives the ability for them to reach their audience everywhere now, including in the living room and the TV. And then be able to really track conversions and attribution for IP address. So it really opens up a kind of a big deal for advertisers. And on the publishing side, it also gives them the ability to reach audience, create more content, and of course, monetize their supply, which is, our specialty and kind of what we do for publishers.
Fred, any thoughts from you as to how you see the buy side, growing and shaping the strategies as CTV grow?
Yeah, I mean, so the quick bit of background also is that, my history in connected TV is as long as connected TV is. When I was at EW Scripps and I was part of a 2-person team to lead the pivot of their news brand to connected TV, that was before anyone really understood what connected TV was going to become. It was a bit of a joke, and it was incredibly, incredibly exciting. And for us, it grew, like a rocket, even in the early days. And so what we saw was the beginning of the next generation of television, quite simply. And with that came a lot of the scrappiness that you have to hustle through, but which also at the same time leads to those who are there early being able to lay a lot of the groundwork for what the entire ecosystem is going to look like, which is something that, I'm pleased that I was a very small sort of part of being around. And, and now today, further up, after Scripps, I founded Origin with my former boss at Scripps, Stephen Strong. And it was because we understood the buy side had billions more potential than was currently being unlocked through what was a fairly traditional view of advertising on a very new generation of television. And so the potential is only beginning to be seen right now. I would say we're at about 10% of the capacity of brands we need putting dollars into connected TV than what we could be by now. But the other thing, which I think is the most exciting about the connected TV and the buy side, is we look at it as a media buying agency and a creative agency, is the potential for the democratization of the living room to small brands, local brands, people that don't have big budgets but want to be on the big screen. That to me, I think, is going to be a huge part of the next generation of this entire experience that we're all going through, and a very exciting one.
Thank you, Fred. Anna?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add here. I mean, I think what's exciting is this is constantly evolving, and the scrapiness that was mentioned, like you're constantly inventing new ways to do things in order to get things to work. So what I'm really excited about too is I read a stat that said that by 2028 that CTV ad spend is forecasted to be $42 billion. That would be more than double what we did last year, which is just wild. And I think it makes sense. The buzziest shows that you're watching, how you watch TV today, a lot of those center around CTV. This year alone, we saw that CTV viewership surpassed linear for the first time. So I think this is just going to continue to grow, and it's kind of an exciting place to be and to see how it develops.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. See, personally, we have seen a lot of clients double down on CTV as the growth strategy. And, personally, I have seen the journey of how the digital, mobile, and everything shaped up. I was worried that probably the programmatic penetration into CTV would put a downward pressure on the CPMs. But luckily, so far, I have seen the CPM stay pretty steady. And, at the end of the day, the story told via video is much stronger in general. And especially if that is shown on the, the big TV, that's definitely way to grab attention of the audience. So I would like to understand how you have seen the spend grow, what kind of pressure you have seen in terms of, on the inventory, on the CPMs and so on. So what has your experience been?
Who do you want to kick off?
Yeah, anyone can pick up. So,
I mean, I can very quickly, just from the buy side, 30 seconds, Anna, and I think you'll be more qualified. We deal directly with brands and their agencies to handle full service media buys, fully managed media buys. And I will just tell you that it's increasing, but not just for the obvious reasons. It's increasing because people are seeing growth. People like us are seeing growth in innovation budgets actually go much more mainstream, and a lot of brands and their agencies are now willing to take actually a little bit of risk in order to stand out, and they're willing to put far bigger budgets behind those risks than they used to, which is a good sign for small and sort of enterprising little folks like Origin, who are here to disrupt, but disrupt in what's soon to be a $40 billion market is kind of tricky. But that it is all growing, and as they start to see more results, as they start to understand it better, that growth, I think, will actually start to hockey stick quite fast.
Yeah, just to add there, I mean, I think political's been a great story this year. I read a stat that said that it's up 35% since 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than that at this point, but I think all those gains are actually in CTV and not other formats. I know that the majority of deals that come across my desk, there's always a CTV component, if not solely CTV, that they're looking to transact upon. And again, I think it makes sense. Marketers are just trying to follow the eyeballs, and that market's definitely grown. On the flip side, there has been some downward pressure on CPMs. I know, we're saying CPMs are going up, but we've even seen the most premium apps, such as like Netflix and Disney, kind of back off of those, original really high CPMs that they originally went to market with, which isn't too surprising because there's just a lot more competition with the explosion of, more content being on streaming devices. But the one thing I would call out that I think this opens up more opportunities to transact in biddable, closer to the campaign flight time. When we prioritize transparency in biddable environments, we can avoid that race to the bottom and net out at CPMs that are fair to publishers, but also allow buyers to meet their goals.
Yeah, and Anna, just to add to that, I mean, I've had similar experience. I think overall, we're all seeing CTV spend, right? It's just been increasing. But I feel like the landscape is changing on the buying activity, right? Like in the early days, there was limited amount, only premium brands where you had CTV channels and there was super premium CPMs there. Now we're seeing a surge in new publisher supply, right? Some mid-tier quality brands, supply is increasing significantly. And what we're seeing is from a programmatic standpoint, we are seeing CPMs kind of drop down a little bit, right? And it's also become a little bit more increasingly difficult, I feel, for these mid-tier publishers to really obtain the budgets because a lot of these buyers are still looking for these more premium brands. But, with the advent of a lot of the new AdTech that's been coming out in the last year or so, it does give publishers the ability to really manage auctions and to really find the highest CPM at the right time.
Paul, I have one question or thought there. Like as Fred was sharing before, previously linear TV budgets are only meant for big brand advertisers because a small buyer can't really buy a small portion of the inventory. Similarly, on the publishing side, do you see with the advent of programmatic, where even if you have a small inventory, you can monetize it without having like a big sales team? Do you see any, medium-sized publishers shaping up? More and more publishers actually coming live?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's like I said, there's a lot of channels out there now, but it is becoming increasingly difficult for these mid-tier publishers to really get their supply out there in front of the right buyers. But with all of these, a lot of SSPs are now, they have a lot of budgets behind them on the CTV side, and a lot of these industry-leading EdTech platforms will allow these publishers to really tap into those budgets. And obviously, it's not as straightforward as doing it on the website, but for a savvy publisher or working with a company like us who helps publishers, we could really be able to find the right demand for them at the right time to really, manage their auctions and manage their stack overall. So definitely tons of opportunity, and I feel like it's just going to continuously grow more and more, kind of how we saw the web evolve over the last decade.
And can I jump on the back of that, Paul, to what you were saying, right? I mean, I'm thinking of a real experience that, we just went through in the last 12 hours, right? Which was a fairly small connected TV publisher, pitching us to buy their spots. And they sent through the deck, they sent through the channels, they showed us the content, they showed us the volume, and the volume was low, right? But we were more impressed by the presentation and the content and the general sort of demeanor of the brand than we were with the volume. And so we've agreed to buy their inventory, right? Because not only did we like the quality of what there was, but every time we go out and we start putting together a plan for a client of ours, whether it's a travel client, someone like Visit Florida that actually really has a very large footprint, or even Macy's that's obviously always national, we don't go looking for the name of the channel, we go looking for the audience. And the right audience will often be watching a smaller channel, because that is one of the things that we are seeing shift, which I think we're also partly sort of helping happen. It's not about the icon or the logo of the channel you're watching, it's about the person that's watching it. And so these small publishers need to be found, and they need to be, able to really present what they have to media buyers such as ourselves. Because what is changing is it's not really a case of anyone being too small anymore.
Got it.
Absolutely. That's great.
And again, as with any new emerging trend and solution, there are bound to be challenges, right? This is a huge discovery process. And in the discovery process, we also find some players trying to take advantage of the system, take advantage of, what is it to be defined. And we do hear some challenges around, say, measurement attribution, but we also hear about some challenges like fraud. It could be, be on any end of the supply, right? Recently, there was an article by Nick Stark who said there was a middleman who was playing the game of actually showing 3 ads stitched as one ad and paying the platform only for one ad. But whereas, from the advertisers, they were able to make money for 3 ads, right? So again, I think my personal view is with anything that is emerging, we are bound to see some of these. Luckily, everybody is catching up and able to handle this. But I would like our panel to share their thoughts on what you think is, the current challenges that the CTV world is facing, both from the supply side as well as the buy side. And what are your thoughts on how to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I could start. God, that example makes me want to throw up a little bit. Yeah, transparency is definitely something we think about a lot. We launched TV by OpenX last year, which exclusively consists of broadcast quality and direct inventory. And a lot of that is for the reasons that you just kind of called out, is getting closer to the publisher, but then also ensuring that it is the type of content that a marketer wants to run alongside. So we don't have any resellers, no ad networks that are kind of in the middle, no fireplace apps, games, mobile, UGC, or any sort of unintentional inventory included in our supply. I think the benefit is the publisher actually reaps the benefits of, marketers spending on their content. But it also improves the transparency and the control and being able to provide those log level reporting for complete visibility into impressions. And then we also offer the ability to be able to layer on any of our 250 plus data partners, including Captify, Samba TV, TV Vision, to really be able to reach that audience using our cross-platform identity graph. I honestly, I think that being able to scale and then optimize towards those campaign outcomes is really, the way we overcome that. The other thing I wanted to call out too is, I'm a big fan of content object signals, but I also think that there's a pretty big challenge there. One, encouraging publishers to pass those and giving them the right controls so that they're not passing too much upstream to DSPs and buyers. But then also simplifying it on the buy side so that they're able to target and report against that. I'll give you an example. So we ingest genre today. When we analyzed the data that we were getting from our supply partners, there was over 11 million different variations being passed to us. And so our solution for that was we actually took that data, we normalized it. We normalized it and then we categorized it into 9 categories and then 120 subcategories to simplify the process so that if a buyer wants to target against it or report against it, it's easy to understand. And then, really giving that easy button so that they're able to understand where their budgets went. So I think it's important for us to just ensure that we're making it easy for marketers to be able to transact here.
Were those the basic IAB categories, those top 9 categories?
No, we aligned to a couple of places. We looked at the taxonomies for DV360, the Trade Desk. We looked at what was commonly passed that sort of had sort of did our own sort of version of that. Yeah. But ensuring that we're compliant with the Trade Desk is always really important. So
and really entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah.
While I'm here, Paul, I don't have much to add. But it's the challenges for us, have really it's been diminishing over the last 5 years or so. But education and understanding, that isn't just having a brand understand what the F-connected TV is, but actually we're through that little bit. It's now actually having an education to help them understand its potential. And therefore, giving them that peace of mind that they should be making a bigger investment, let's say, in connected TV over social, for example. So trying to keep people up to speed with that is always an uphill climb. Whether it's, like we're about to release a big case study about performance on connected TV for a CPG brand that we've had a 12-month flight with, but having people understand that, and then also getting them not just comfortable with its potential, but the measurement side and the targeting side, is you're literally sitting someone down and trying to cram an entire sort of masters into their brain in like 30 minutes when they've probably been doing it in a completely different way for the last 20 years. But it's now that is beginning to get easier because the trust is starting to be there. The more brands that are now going out there are helping other brands say, what, we don't really need to ask the questions now, because if these guys are there, then clearly they've done the diligence, so we'll just follow in their footsteps. But I would say that that's been the challenge, because we don't have enough demand to satisfy the amount of viewers watching connected TV. And I'm just talking about North America. We do, there is now enough audience to reach anybody you want. You can run a very, very targeted nationwide campaign, and there is more than enough to get there. But we still don't have enough advertisers yet, or enough budgets from those advertisers. But that is what's pivoting, I think, quite quickly.
Sure, absolutely. And on the flip side of that, on the publishing side, it's increasingly more difficult to actually be able to obtain those budgets properly, right? Which I mentioned earlier, because I think a big part of that has been, in the early days of CTV, there's really no industry regulations. So like ads.text wasn't required, S-chain, sellers file, all that was not required. So that opened up like a lot of fraudulent activity. So the industry tightened down on all that. However, with that, it definitely has made it more challenging for publishers to be able to really obtain those budgets and monetize their publications properly. So it's really important for publishers to really understand how to be able to, set up auctions, make sure that there's transparency within the bid stream so that the buyer knows exactly what they're buying. Otherwise, monetization will be severely limited. But one thing I think, Anna, what you mentioned earlier, which I'd like to talk about, is we've seen a huge difference when we're able to have the publisher pass all the vital macros through, from a content perspective, a device perspective, location, really as much information as possible about the publication and the actual content being consumed at that time. Being able to pass that downstream through from the publishing side through the buy side has really amounted in a huge amount of buying activity when done in a proper way.
Yeah, I think that's like the trust piece, right? Like it's actually, there's no way to spoof that if they're actually passing all the right information.
For sure.
Yeah, I think one good news is probably for the CTV world, we don't have to create or build solutions from the scratch. It is applying the thought process or the solutions that exist on the web world and expanding them to cover the the CTV market as well. So we have a few questions from the audience, so probably we could go over a few of them. Here is one question. Does auction duplication exist for CTV inventory? If yes, do you have any idea on what is the current duplication rate that we are seeing in the industry?
And by duplication, do you mean like SSPs bidding on the same inventory, essentially? Is that?
Yeah, that's how I also see that. Like you have one request getting, taking a tree format and being duplicated into 5-10 requests.
Yeah. So listen, we all know the industry is a little inefficient when it comes to this. Unfortunately, I want to say yes, duplication does work from to increase revenue on the publishing side. That obviously caused a lot of issues. I'm sure, Freddie, I'm sure you hate that on the buy side, right? I think it does work to an extent. But we are seeing, obviously, a lot of these SSPs and DSPs have QPS limits where, they're just not going to be looking at the duplicate request, right? So some of them will, but we're seeing things get a lot more efficient now where you can't just, throw a bunch of different, same demand on single supply and duplicate requests. So I feel like buyers are getting a lot more savvy.
And that's happening really, really quickly, Paul. That's happening in real time, quite frankly. Like about 9 months ago, it was a really, really serious problem. Like, we had to figure that out really quickly because it was getting so unbelievably expensive, actually, just simply on the tech servicing side. And as soon as we realized what we could do and that there was still plenty of sort of scope for what we needed, we were able to put measures in place at our end, because, you know, part of what Origins had to do is build its own SSP and its own DSP and its own video ad server to handle its creative formats. We just worked out how to dedupe, as we would say at our end, and suddenly the costs went down, the efficiency went up, and so now it's no longer a problem for us. But it was very much it is probably still very much existential, and I do understand it from the publisher's side, but it is also one of the many things that leads to all sorts of slippery slope types of problems, including, you know, like sort of frequency and repetition based problems, like the sort of thing that we don't need to bore the audience with today because everyone talks about it and it's incredibly boring and tedious and humans can solve it. But Wall Street would rather, you know, have Viacom and other people fill their spots. So anyway, but yeah, it does exist.
Okay. And there is one more question. In terms of audience targeting and identification, they're trying to understand how much is IP-based identification and what kind of impact does it have on the CPMs of connected TV?
Should I take that as a buyer? I mean, like, yeah, the answer is that everything we try to do with our targeting sort of starts at, you know, keeping the IP in basis, because we send different creatives to different IPs every day, and it's how we track the creative methodology in the story. So the IP actually for us is important for a number of different reasons, but it is all kind of rooted there. And then from there, we then work with a number of different data partners to understand the signals that, you know, we think are coming from that household. Obviously, it's not an individual, but how we can then best discern and create the viewer's experience accordingly. And the answer is it can get very detailed, and it can also get very, very expensive. And one of the things that we really try to preach to our clients who are willing to listen is don't over-target your connected TV campaigns. It's a really, really big mistake. It's not clever. You're actually going to be losing a lot of your potential audience, and you know you want to be careful about that. So we always try and keep it sort of fairly limited, and the only time we would allow for really intensive targeting is probably when we're bringing in a lot of our clients' first-party data as well. So, for example, for a client of ours like Macy's, they've got their loyalty members, and then they've got just non-loyalty members. They give us the information about the loyalty members, so we know their households, we know their IP, so they can get a certain creative experience versus other people. For a CPG brand, it's people who they know have bought their product before versus who haven't. So now we know, you know, with a better likelihood, nothing is perfect, but with a better likelihood how to go after the lapsed or non-loyal or new customers versus the existing customers. Speaking from the creative side, which is what we are, and I run the studio, like that's fun, being able to tell such different stories in the living room based upon those sorts of signals, but you don't want to take it too far.
Got it. Fred, on that, just one final question. So you understand, like there are buyers who try to target certain kind of, you know, their loyal users or, you know, some expenders. But when you see the whole network, are there any specific buckets of audience there is like overspending, and any buckets where, you know, people are not really able to target? It could be even for technical reasons. Hey, you know what, IP is missing, or, you know, there are certain pockets of inventory which usually doesn't end up getting targeted.
Well, we just work, so we do all of our media buying through our own portfolio of publishers who we work with one-to-one, right? So it's difficult because we will only allow a publisher into that portfolio if they are vetted, approved, and we know they're going to send upstream the information that we need to feel like we can reliably do something with that impression. So I probably can't speak too well to that. But yes, I mean, there are obviously buckets, you know, that can't and shouldn't be. Anna mentioned T-Vision. I just want to give a shout out to those guys, and like Jan and that crew, we've been partners with them for almost 5 years. And attention's a big business for us, and it's an emerging problem in connected TV. But again, another example is I would sooner, instead of say there are people that we wouldn't, I'd say there are people who we're more likely to target. So one of the initiatives that we had with TVision was looking at the signals from devices to see how long has a device been switched on, right? So we don't get that from TVision, we get that from, ideally, from upstream. And we know through the work that we do with TVision that the most attentive audience is an audience whose device has been, let's say, switched on for 92 minutes or less. After that, they start falling into the realm of like passive viewer, which obviously then sort of changes the effectiveness of the campaign and the budget being spent that we're spending on behalf of our client. So I would probably tilt it in the other direction and say we're very quirky, we're very eccentric at Origin about how we target. So I'd sooner say it's about who we're more likely to than who we're less likely to.
Understood. Got it. Anna or Paul, do you have any thoughts around the technicalities, be it like a ad insertion method that is preferred, or even when you both from a buy side or a sell side, when you get, for example, Anna, a campaign, is there some pockets of inventory for technical reasons which doesn't get included in that? Or Paul, similarly for you, when you have some publisher inventory, yeah, are there some norms that you are trying to establish across, because of which some inventory becomes less valuable or more valuable? So
Well,
maybe
I would say, ad insertion, I mean, it really depends on the publisher and what technology they have. So that's a broad question, tough one to answer. But in general, from being able to, work with publishers to be able to, manage their ad stack and tie into budgets. Like I mentioned, AdTech has evolved quite a bit. If anything, it's even maybe even more advanced now than on the website. We could run full server-side client auctions, tied directly into DSPs and SSPs to be able to really find those right pockets of inventory. But what I think is really also great too is, we have the ability to read the ad request that's coming in down to the device, the location, right? The content type, all of that. And then we can, find pockets of inventory and buys and target it directly to that specific piece of inventory. So there's really a lot of granularity in being able to kind of slice and dice and find the right pockets to monetize properly.
Good.
Yeah, I would say like typically we do a lot of audits on our side to make sure that signals are being passed, and that's all signals. So typically like the more signals that are passed, the more likely that it's going to be bought on our exchange. It's sort of like a different angle that I keep hearing in the market is like this idea of like time of day, and the fact that DSPs tend to hit their budgets and then there's like this lull and it's usually primetime viewing. So I think that that's sort of like a new challenge that I keep hearing about, that could be an opportunity for, DSPs to do different day parting in order to hit like the highest viewing point part of the day.
We do tons of day parting. Love it.
Yeah. And it's like publishers are changing that too with like their, dynamic CPMs that they're passing to ensure that they're actually filling that time of day too. So.
Got it. And again, I think we have come a long way in terms of classifying what actually is CTV. But here we have a user who asked like, how we see a lot of TVs at public places like bars. Do we still have that dilemma? Is it out of home CTV? In your world, do you usually classify it as CTV?
So that's the hot topic this year. I mean, everyone's talking about that. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings. I'm sure Anna and Freddie, you guys have your own feelings on it. At OnCore, we've really been working with a lot of standard out-of-home publishers to bring them CTV budgets. I feel like there's a lot out there that if it's not done properly, then it is definitely not CTV. But the way that we've been going about it is basically being able to customize the experience so it is a true TV experience, right? So you're, same as sitting in a living room watching TV, you're actually watching content, you're engaged in it, and then you're serving ads. It just happens to be in a public environment like a bar, restaurant, grocery store, and so on. So I feel like if it is done correctly, there's premium content, there's actual confirmed eyeballs in front of that screen, then you could make a case for it being CTV and tapping into CTV budgets. From my perspective, I'm sure Freddie, you know this too on your side, like maybe the attribution is not quite there in a public environment. It makes things a bit more challenging. But on the flip side, it also gives brands a much more cost affordable way to reach their audience, right? Lower CPMs, more reach, and so on. So it just really depends on what the buyer's looking for.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
go,
go ahead.
you go, Anna, and
I was
I'll
just gonna,
jump in.
I echo your sentiments too. Like, I think it needs to be done the right way. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity if we get the education to buyers about what it is and where it is. The targeting that they can offer to like statewide or even like the actual location, I think is super powerful. And it hasn't hit its stride yet, but I do think that it's an area that could be growth. So I'm going to put my bets on that. Maybe it might not be next year, but maybe the following year we're going to really see that scale as far as spend goes.
I think that's a good place to put money. So we accidentally fell into digital out of home 2 years ago, and I really do mean accidentally. One of our clients was talking to us, and suddenly they started talking about airport TVs, and we were like, "Oh yeah, airport TVs!" And before we knew it, we were running a campaign across whatever it was, 197 airports, 2,000 screens for emergency vitamins, right? And we immediately got excited by it again because of the creative potential, like of imagining being able to talk to different people. Different audiences at different airports, even different gates at airports, about the journey they're about to take and all that kind of thing. So we really got into it. We invested. And what I would say to that is, look, it's connected TV insofar as it's on a television, right? Like that is the extent of it. Honestly, this is my opinion, not so much necessarily origins, but yes. So with that definition, it is. After that, all bets are off, right? Like, is it sound on? Is it sound off? Is it 30 feet up in the air? Is it 2 feet above the ground? Is it actually sitting on top of a cash machine in an ATM in a casino? Is it in a bar where there are 800 other screens and 5 people giving you shots, right? Like, it's a very, very different experience, but it's a brilliant one. But and I know that a lot of our friends that we work with, a lot of our publisher friends, absolutely define it as connected TV. And I don't have a problem with that, as long as in the signals, as long as we're seeing that this is, not in the living room, right? Because it is worth less right now because of the challenges or the different ways in which you want to go about measuring this. Like, you can't run a brand study. We run brand studies across every household for every single client campaign that we run, and that's because we know who we're trying to ask, right? Whether they answer or not, that's their prerogative. But out of home is a different matter altogether, and that changes everything because you've got to be able to prove your results, beyond the ROAS that they might see 3-6 months down the road. But so it just needs to be understood and explained as what it is. It needs to be priced differently to the living room. You've got the one-to-one and the one-to-many debate as well, which is a really important one because that actually adds tremendous value to out of home. So it's all a toss-up, but it's just much harder to control. But as Anna said, this is a growth area, a significant one. And it's one that I'm really excited about because it can become a very fun, creative play if done right.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. I think just to add to that, I feel like we need to kind of evolve more and be able to have the ability to pass more of those signals. We've been working with the IAB to try to be a little bit more transparent with the bid stream. And there are signals such as labeling it as an out-of-home device, but that's not the full picture, right? Like, is it a big giant TV in a bar, or is, like you said, is it a small tablet on top of a cash register? Those are very different experiences. Both of them have their pros and cons. So I feel like the industry is evolving, and out of home and CTV are starting to merge a bit more as we kind of expand on it.
They just need, like, I would almost I'd almost make it like, when you've got like the umbrella of OTT in general, right? And then you've got all these screens and you've got connected TV off on its own under this umbrella. You kind of want digital out of home to exist sort of somewhere on that side of the equation, because it's still fundamentally the same kind of class. But yeah, I think it's an awesome place to be looking.
Got it. So moving on, this is a evolving space, one of the hottest in terms of where all the money is going and audience minutes are going. What are the emerging solutions, best practices, or the new creative ideas that we are seeing in this space? Anna, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the next challenge for us ad tech folks is to remember that at the end of this, there's a consumer who's actually sitting down to engage with the content. So I think we need to challenge ourselves to ensure that we're bringing them along and engaging with the advertising creative as well, versus just losing them through a heavy ad load. I personally love pause ads. I was watching Hulu last night. I went to pause it, and there was a Charmin ad, which I thought was very clever. And that made me chuckle, and I feel like it makes me like the brand more. The other piece I would just call out is I'm really excited for the innovations that's to come. I mean, I think back to 16-year-old Anna watching 90210 and seeing Donna Martin wearing a shirt, and I looked everywhere for this shirt and I couldn't find it. And there's companies out there like ShopSense AI that's actually bringing this to light, where you can actually shop what you're seeing on TV, which I think is really, really cool and really, really powerful. So, making all my dreams come true to be able to shop everything on TV, I think is really great. And I think it's good for not only the consumer, but it's good for the marketer, and it's also good for the content owner as well.
That's so funny you mentioned that. We're just about to start conducting a nationwide survey around shoppable TV. And I think there are parts of it we're looking at right, some parts of it we're looking at wrong as sort of people in the ivory tower that we need to kind of figure out. But yeah, and you're right. When I saw my first ever Lou Roll ad in a pause ad, I was like, well done, brilliant. And I love pause ads. They're a format that we don't do, but that doesn't mean I can't love them to death. But obviously from my side, and appreciate that we haven't talked about what we do, and I'm not going to now. I love the kind of creative formats and capabilities that we're bringing to the table. It's for 15 years, people have learned that they can have incredibly dynamic creatives on small screens, on social, desktop, mobile, etc. But somehow we've all got into the habit of thinking that as soon as it comes to the living room, things can only be the way they have been for 7 decades. Like, here's my generic spot, I'm going to run it, and that's the end of it. What we took a risk on, and we're enjoying was no, why not? Why can't we actually be more agile than that? Why can't we talk about this afternoon's weather? Why can't we talk about the current sports or sports betting? Because the thing that I would add that I remembered because of what you said, Anna, is attention is a problem on TV, right? Everyone has a second screen. People don't always look. And one of the ways you get them looking is to offer a value exchange with the consumer. You got to give them something. You can't just tell them to buy a truck. You can't just force them to get a loan, right? You've got to give them something in return. And this is actually making us as an industry go back to the roots of advertising and remember something that we have forgotten. And that is that the creative matters. What we actually put in front of someone matters. But we have as an industry become so obsessed about the plumbing and the pipes that we've forgotten about the poetry. And now we're beginning to see the poetry actually be what makes the difference between a client getting what they want out of a budget and not getting what they want out of a budget. And all of that's going to come about not just with the creative formats that we bring to the table, but what everybody is bringing to the table. Like, this is a new generation of TV, and so it needs a new generation of brand presence as well.
Hey, Paul, any thoughts from you on what's emerging as you see from, your platform, the publishers, what they're trying?
Nothing to add really, except, I feel like there's a lot of room for growth on the programmatic side to have these more dynamic formats because, for a direct, standpoint, obviously, buyers could do a lot more when they're, having a direct campaign, be able to use all these formats. from a programmatic standpoint, we really haven't seen that evolve as quickly as I would like to. So I feel like that could be really the next stage in evolution for programmatic, is to be able to accept a lot of these more dynamic type formats.
I think during the recent ad week, which was about 2 weeks ago, they picked a few startups, showcased whatever they were thought as emerging technologies, and nearly half of them are around CTV creatives, right? How you make the CTV creatives more dynamic, shoppable, and probably in a few years' time, every movie we watch, every celebrity we follow, I think people are going to try and buy what they see there.
Yep.
So, any other closing thoughts? I know we are towards the fag end of our webinar. Anyone like to share anything?
Ashok, just to butt in there, this has probably been one of the most engaging webinars in terms of crowd participation. The number of questions and the quality of questions, and more importantly, I think the kind of questions do point out to the fact that there is obviously a lot of interest, which is what Anna has brought up, which is what Paul has mentioned, and Fred has also, have all posited that, see, there is this huge, immense opportunity here in front of us. But the fact that there have been so many questions also suggests that there are equally high number of unknowns. And we are probably discovering the path as we keep going forward in terms of both the challenges as well as the solutions. So, what you mentioned as something which is years away, probably we should not be surprised if it's just a couple of months away. So, Anna, your closing thoughts, last 30 seconds. What is it that you'd probably suggest to publishers who are already there in CTV, or publishers who want to move to CTV, who want to probably now certainly start setting up something on that side? So any parting thoughts from your side?
I think like the things that I think about, or at least keep me up at night, is constantly thinking about that end consumer. And I know I mentioned it before, but like ad load is so important, and keeping that consumer loyal to your service. And so I think having a good ratio between that is really important. And yeah, like it seems like the most successful platforms are the ones that have that front of mind. So that's what I would say.
Eventually, customer is the king. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Paul, any closing thoughts from your side?
No, I would just say, if there's anyone out there that has any questions that we didn't answer, I mean, feel free to reach out. Happy to help. I always love, talking about, helping publishers and monetizing their publications. So just feel free to reach out, and, happy to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'm sure, you'll probably get a lot of response back in terms of, once we hear back from them, we'll definitely pass on the leads to you.
All right, great. Thank you.
Fred, your closing thought.
Yeah, a 30-second thought is, if you're a publisher looking to break into the world of connected TV, I think all I would say is, measure twice and cut once. It's still the Wild West, which makes it dangerous. It's a lot sharkier and a lot more competitive and a lot more expensive than you might think, not just in terms of getting yourself set up, but the costs of actually running a channel and keeping the content fresh enough to stay relevant and up there in the channel guide, for example. But like it is humanity's closest attempt we've seen so far at the democratization of TV. So you do belong there, but do your due diligence and be very, very careful and learn, and ask before you set foot. And that way, I think you'll really stand a fighting chance. But it's not just a case of, if you build it, they will come. Discovery is a very big problem for content on TV, which anyone as a consumer will know. Like, I forget where my content is that I'm watching. I forget discovering new stuff. But it is worth it. I'm not trying to put you off. I'm just saying, be careful and tread carefully and do it right.
Got it, Fred. So, I'm sure as people get into the gold mining part of it, shovels will also come out. There will probably be people who will probably make a lot of money on the shovel side of it as well. So, Ashok, how do you probably quickly summarize your 30 seconds on the views that you heard today? How either sides have to probably, all the three stakeholders the kind of things that they need to probably keep in mind?
No, I'm like not just in line with seeing the growth we have seen in CTV in the last few years. I see everyone is excited about the kind of creative formats and the kind of solutions that we are going to see in the creative space. And as far as the challenges go, personally, I have seen, and I also believe our panelists have seen uh, fewer challenges and more solutions compared to what we have seen as we were transitioning into the web world, as we were transitioning into the mobile world. If at all I have to think back, like, 5-7 years ago, and also like 10-12 years ago, the amount of challenges we have seen are far more plenty. The amount of unknowns are far more compared to CTV. So, I think we definitely are in the uh, right space in terms of bringing audience what they need in the CTV world.
Got it. Thank you all once again, for sharing your thoughts, for, putting forward in front of the audience your expertise in terms of your experiences, etc. And more importantly, thank you for taking out time being here with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you all once again.
You're welcome. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.